Hello everyone, welcome to the Red State. So as I did earlier, I went over my other bowl picks, but now it's time to go over for the big bowl games, the playoffs, and the NY6 bowls. Now remember, I'm making these picks before the bowls start. So obviously, if there's news that a coaching news or a player news is going to stay out because of the draft or whatever it may be, obviously that could possibly change my predictions. So when you grade me on how I did on my predictions, you have to do it based off before the bowls started. And this one, and for this one, I'm going to go over some more stats I like the other one, or just kind of rambling through them. But let's start off with the NY6 bowl game. So let's start off with the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. So this is 12 Pittsburgh versus 10 Michigan State. So to the naked eye, Michigan State's higher, right? And they're even a 1.5 point favorite. So Kenneth Walker is just such a beast. So Michigan State, they should win this game, right? Not so fast. You have to look at the stats here. And here's one key stat. So we know Pittsburgh. We know what they are on offense. Kenny Pickett loves to sling that ball around. There's a reason why he was top 3, in the Heisman voting, and is going to be a first-round pick in the draft next year. Well, guess what Michigan State is? And their passing yards allowed per game. Ooh, it's last in the country at 130th. Ooh. Yeah, that's not gonna go well. Plus, we look at points per game, passing yards per game, defensive points per game, defensive passing yards per game, defensive rushing yards per game, third down conversion percentage, defensive third down conversion percentage, turnover margins, kicking game, all favor Pittsburgh. So besides the rushing game, which obviously favors towards Michigan State and Kenneth Walker, and then in penalties are both kind of the same. Other than that, everything else favors Pittsburgh there. And because Kenny Pickett wants to go out, on a bang, for his final game, since he's going to go pro, and the scouts are going to be there, and look great and all that. Like, he's going to want to leave a good lasting impression on a good team here. So I'm going to take Pittsburgh away, and I don't think this game honestly will come down one position. I think it could be a blowout. I have Pittsburgh winning 42-24. Next, you got the Fiesta Bowl. You got 5 Notre Dame versus 9 Oklahoma State. Now, this one, out of the 4 NY6 Bowl, this one was hard for me to predict. Because I feel like, Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman, his new coach, I feel like the players are still going to come out, energized and all that, not because Ryan Kelly just ditched him. But there's a couple issues, like, for example, Notre Dame's safety, star safety, Kyle Hamilton, he's declared for the draft. He's not going to play in the bowl game. And I believe the running back, Fuller, who's a senior, is not going to play in the bowl game either. He's going to opt out, so that's kind of a big deal there. Now, on Oklahoma State's side, it's like, oh yeah, I don't trust them because I just trust them against Baylor. They let me down. But their star running back, who was out for basically that whole game against Baylor, is he going to play or not? Because if he plays, that's a big difference maker, as we saw. And also, it's Oklahoma State's defense. They got torched against Baylor's ground attack, which Notre Dame likes to run the ball. So it's like, how are they going to react there? It's just kind of hard for me to predict this one. But because I feel like Oklahoma State, since there's a lot of senior-heavy team, like the defensive coordinator is going to be leaving for Ohio State. So this is kind of like the final, because I don't think Oklahoma State would be top 10 good again next year, or it may take them a couple years to get top 10 good again. So I feel like this is their last final hurrah, if you will, for a while. I feel like they're going to try to win this game. So I have Oklahoma State winning this game 20-16. It's going to be a lower scoring game. Next, you get the Rose Bowl with 6 Ohio State versus 11 Utah. I know Utah's looking very good at all that recently. But for me, this is all comes down to, okay, is Ohio State, in it? Because they lost to Michigan, they didn't get to make the playoffs, which they usually do. It's like, are they going to be in it? Well, my feeling is, I feel like Ryan Day will get them in it. And I feel like their offensively, they're so talented. Olave's last game, Wilson's last game. CJ Stroud wants to put a stamp on, the season to kind of get himself as a Heisman favorite going into next year stuff. I feel like now what's interesting here is that when you look at the stats, so there's There's four things like points per game, passing yards per game, turnover margin, kicking that favor Ohio State. But then rush yards per game, defense and third down, conversion percentage, and penalties per game favor Utah. So it's 4-3 there. There's a bunch of like stats that are very similar, like within like 10 spots of each other. So it's very evenly matched up here, which is why I don't think it'll be a blowout. But I do think the line of like Ohio State by touchdowns spot on. So I have Ohio State win by touchdown here. Had a good game, 34-27. Next, you got the Sugar Bowl. You got 7 Baylor versus 8 Ole Miss here. This is a very interesting game here because Ole Miss, the offensive coordinator for Ole Miss is leaving for Oklahoma, I believe. So you got Matt Corral. I know it's his final game in Ole Miss jersey. You wonder how he's going to do. So sorry. So you think he would? So you think Matt Corral would want to leave a lasting impression for the scouting and make sure he goes to the first round. But Baylor, as we saw against Oklahoma State, I just like the way they just play a physical brand of football. They're gonna run the ball down your throat, and I don't. And Ole Miss is not that great at stopping the run, so that plays into Baylor's hands perfectly. And when you look at the stats, obviously passing yards per game is going to go Ole Miss, and they have a better kicking game. And but other than that, it's like mostly all the other factors, especially on the defense side, all favor Baylor here. So I feel like even though Ole Miss in that crowd, I know wants to leave a good impression on that, I just have a strange feeling that Baylor's going to win this game actually. So I have Baylor win this game at 28-24. So now time for the two playoff matchups. Let's start with Alabama versus Cincinnati. So when you look at the stats here, so Alabama has 4 advantages here. Cincinnati has 3, and then the other stats they're very similar basically. So the stats Cincinnati is by far the better rushing team here because they're 47th. Alabama's just 80th. Cincinnati is also better at points per game given up allowed, and then allowing defensive passing yards per game, which is second in the country. Their defensive points per game is just 4th in the country. But now the question is, how much is that attributed to the weaker competition of the American Conference? I don't know. So we're about to find that out. But Cincinnati's pass defense versus Alabama's passing offense will be interesting here, especially Mechie is out for the season with the torn ACL, since one less offensive weapon for Alabama. And even though Alabama's offensive line played extremely well versus Georgia's defense for whatever reason, we know they could be had, and Cincinnati's pass rush is pretty good there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. We know Desmond offense, he's not the greatest, but we know he's going to do everything he can to do well. And Alabama's defense, again, they can be had. So I feel like this would be a closer game, but I feel like the line of 13 is basically spot on there. I have Alabama getting the win here in the end, 30-17. Now you go to the 2 Michigan versus 3 Georgia. I feel like 7.5 is a little bit too much for a lot. I feel like this is one of those hard games for people to go either way, because there's 3 things that Georgia's good at, 3 things Michigan's good at, and then all the rest of the stats are pretty similar because they're similar type of teams. They like to run the ball first, play good defense, get a bunch of sacks, stuff like that. But basically, what this comes down to is I feel like, although Michigan feels like the more destiny type of team, and Georgia's defense corner, even though he's there, is obviously taking the Oregon coaching job, so that might be an interesting situation there. I just feel like Georgia to be number 1 all year, all of a sudden falter against Bama and then falter in the playoffs. I just feel like they're not going to allow that nosedive to end the season. I feel like Georgia's just too talented for that. Their defense, after getting embarrassed against Bama, will come back on track here. Because I don't trust Michigan's passing offense at all. So as long as they can stop Michigan's running game, which they should because they're a good rushing defense, I feel like Georgia can win this game. But again, same thing with Michigan. I feel like Michigan, they can stop Georgia's running game. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. But I'm going to take Georgia here to win barely, 20-19. So then you would have a hypothetical Alabama-Georgia matchup. And that one can go either way. I feel like Georgia would learn from their mistakes. If they did do a rematch, for example, I'm not sure if they need to start JT Barrett for the Michigan game, but for Alabama, they would certainly have to, because Stetson Bennett, the quarterback for Georgia, clearly will not beat Bama. So it'll be interesting to see here if they even start JT Daniels against Michigan. I feel like they should, but I can understand why they don't, save him. So they don't have recent film on him, and they just plug him into Alabama, gives Nick Saban some trouble there, preparing wise. But I feel like um, it's again where I picked Georgia as the champion for the longest time. Preseason preseason I picked Oklahoma, but then as soon as the season started, I picked Georgia all the way through to be my champion. No matter who was facing the championship, whether it was Bama, Ohio State, whoever it was. So at this point, despite how they looked against Bama, I'm still going to ride with them as of right now. And then obviously, if Michigan upsets Georgia, then I would, actually strongly consider Michigan to win that. I do feel like I do feel like while Alabama could easily win the championship, I do feel like the winner of Michigan Georgia has a very realistic chance of winning the championship. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you very much for listening to my podcast today. Please subscribe to my channel, turn about me. And remember, once the bowl season's over, then I'll start to discuss all the different coaching hires that I've gone on, or coaching re-signings or whatever that I've gone on throughout this whole past month or so. So thank you very much. You all have a wonderful day.